So you've danced with Beyoncé, Jennifer Lopez, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Ariana Grande, to name just a few as well. What is the reality behind this glamorous lifestyle? What is it actually like?
Oh, how much time do we have? It's definitely lots of great ups. I think that that's what people have access to when we post the special, very glamorous, big trips, big stages. And of course, it's very true. That's part of it. But there's a lot of work that goes into the behind the scene of not just one show, but I think building that type of career where as a dancer or any type of independent contractor or artist, to be honest, you're kind of like left on your own to just, push as hard as you can, hustle, like they say, and use as a word. And it's a lot of hard work and dedication for sure.
Yeah, I feel like the word hustle is definitely something that could be applied. That's kind of the top of the tree, these are the big stars of the world. And as you say, it takes a lot of work to get there. So can you give me a little bit of background overview on how one can even achieve such high heights in the dancing world?
Sure. I mean, there are so many routes to becoming a professional dancer and accomplishing your biggest dance goals, which for me were those, pop artists in question. So it can be scary because as a dancer, I'm a mentor and I do teach a lot of dancers. You don't have like that sort of here's how to for dummies, like here's the one path to get there, which can be scary, but also means that it's exciting because you can create your own path. So I can share a little bit of mine to just give as an example, but there are many ways to get there. I actually started dancing later than most. I was 15 years old when I trained in my first dance class. I did some commercial and hip hop and a bunch of different styles of that sort. And then a few years later, I was like, I think this is what I want to do, but I wasn't sure. So I studied, I went to university, went to physical therapy. And then halfway through that program, I was seeing my friends left and right, booking auditions and doing the things I really was, that were lighting me up. So I decided to quit university, jump into dance full time, and I actually built my career here in Canada first for a few years. Did So You Think You Can Dance Canada, which I think was a big diving board for me to then be able to move to Los Angeles and live there for 10 years, where I had access to those big stars, right? Because that was the thing, realizing like, okay, I have a great career here in Canada, but those big auditions for the big movies and the blockbusters and the pop artists like Beyonce, like they're not coming to us for these auditions, so we have to go to them.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I kind of associate that with actors. So, they'll move to Hollywood, to LA to do that, to commit to that. But I never really thought about it in other careers as well, such as dancing. So that must have been terrifying, like literally putting all your eggs in the basket, moving, because you're on the same like area of the world, but it's quite far away to get from Montreal to Los Angeles. That is a huge distance to move everything over and say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. What were your thoughts?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that I did a little later. I guess that's like the theme of my career, like started dancing late, moved to LA. I was 26. And believe it or not, at that point, I feel like I'm a grandma, auditioning with 16, 17, 18-year-olds. But I knew myself better. And I think that's what's important when you're thinking of making a huge decision, like moving to another country. You can take your time, shop around, go to different cities and countries, see what works best for you, because it might not be what your best friend wants, but it's the city that calls your name. So, kind of shop around and then get to know yourself better and work on all the skills that you need to, become that, artist or dancer in my case that you want to be before moving there. So all that to say, I feel like I was tooled good enough. Like I had done some things here in Canada that really helped me get to LA. And even though I was starting from scratch and you're like, okay, here we go, got to build my reputation, I had the tools, I had the experience, I had the support system, which helped me with my confidence.
So what did you do when you got to LA? Firstly, I want to know what it's like actually living in LA. And then I want to know, okay, you pack up your bags, you move across. Do you like turn up to auditions and just shoot your shot wherever you can? Or what's the actual process? How did you climb the ladder? You find the ladder, but how did you get up it?
Right. So you get there and then you realize there's so much adulting to do. First of all, like, you're there and you're like, oh, can't wait to audition, but you have to change like phone numbers. I had to like do my driver's course again or test to get my license, like all these things later in life. So definitely a lot of adulting at first. And then what happens is most of the time dancers will have an agency that represents them. So, and actually as a foreigner, I had to have an agency sort of be my sponsor for my work visa. So when you get there, you already have an agency, and then they start submitting you to auditions. And so you're just running left and right, and, you know, with your resumes and your different costumes, and you're like, okay, next, let's go, hoping for the best.
For a dance audition, do you have to prepare something yourself, or do you have to prepare something they've asked you to do?
It's very different depending on the project. I'd say most of the time you show up and they will either teach you a choreography, give you some lines, give you like an action to do, depending on the, you know, if it's a commercial versus a world tour. So rarely do you have to prepare in advance. But now with the pandemic, and how I think producers and companies have noticed that they can really save a lot of money by just having us audition at home. So a lot of the times now we'll get a call where you get to submit a piece or a solo or a freestyle. Just find this corner in your home, film yourself dancing, and send it over. So it's like a mix of things depending on the project.
I feel like that's quite hard because you don't get anything back. It's not like you're performing for people and they're kind of nodding or like, yeah, or like, oh, not sure. You're just at your camera by yourself. Yeah. That's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, the silver lining is that you do get to do 30 takes if you want and send the best one, right? But like you said, it's, you know, I prefer in person to be, if you were to ask me, to be honest, like you just have that feedback, the energy of the room. I mean, and I remember when I got to Los Angeles, the auditions were so different from Montreal. In Montreal, we're like 30, 40 people showing up, and we all are friends and we know each other and we're just hoping to work together. And then I get to LA and there's like 800 girls they're looking for two. It's like a whole other reality. But that energy in the room like feeds you, or it can be super scary too. But I like to just, you know, work it to my advantage, and it gives me that extra boost. And all of a sudden my alter ego kicks in. And I'm like, let's go, which you don't get when you're in your bedroom trying to just dance between your bed and the chair.
That's also true. The reality behind the camera. I love that.
Yeah.
So you've moved to LA, you've got your driver's license, you've got your new phone number, you've gone to auditions, then where are you at? What's happened then?
Training a lot. So of course, you know, forever a student trying to perfect my skill, but also create those connections. It's so much word of mouth, like a lot of industries, but I would say that, you know, as a dancer, you have to do a lot of that. It's one of the main things to develop. Even if you have an agency, yes, they will submit you. But just to give you an example, when I first met with my agents, they didn't ask me, which choreographers do you know? They said, which choreographer knows you? Like, is there a choreographer or many that would be able to say, oh yeah, Kim, she always comes to class. Oh yes, I've seen her audition. So it really is about those connections. And so all of a sudden you get to Los Angeles, which is very much La La Land. You're like, oh my gosh, so many great classes everywhere, so many fun people. Like, and it's just about throwing yourself in there and training, but also creating these connections, getting involved with the community so that you can create these bonds that will potentially lead to opportunities.
Amazing. Yeah, all about the networking. And I love the description of it being La La Land. I can see it now. I can picture it. When you look back at those years, when do you think your breakthrough was? When do you think personally, I guess you could say highlights on paper, but for you, when was your breakthrough?
I knock on wood, because I think I was pretty lucky with it coming in within the first 2 months. And it's not everyone's reality. I've had friends who, you know, were there for a year or two and hadn't booked one job. And, you know, just as sort of a side note, what happens as like a Canadian or any foreigner, you know, they call us aliens coming into the States, you can't get paid doing a side job like at a restaurant or coffee shop, or like you only legally get to be paid with dance jobs because that's what your work visa is for. And so all of a sudden there's that like extra push. I'm not sort of debating, should I go to this audition? I can't be picky. I can't afford to be picky. I'm just going at everything possible and giving it my all. And I really think that it's that fire under my butt that helped me, you know, get that sort of breaking point. Like I made it in Los Angeles maybe quicker than some other people who are American and maybe don't have that extra, you know, stress of like, I'm not paying rent if I can't book a dance job. So my big break, or one of them I would say, is when I actually crashed an audition. I wasn't originally invited to it, but then I hit up the choreographer and I was like, hey, can I come? Like, we know each other. Again, going back to connections, right? And I showed up, and it was for a music video for Nicole Scherzinger. She was just like, kind of stepping away from the Pussycat Dolls, doing her own thing. And then that music video I ended up booking, but it turned into a first performance for her single on Ellen DeGeneres on American Idol and So You Can Dance US. Then we did a tour around Europe. And like literally to this day, like I just get to work with her here and there and travel the world. And it's just been the gift that keeps on giving. So when that came in and I got the call and I was booked, I was like, I made the right decision, Mom, moving to LA.
But I love that because, yeah, you moved to LA and you did all those things, but it's not like, Nicole's knocking on your door and saying, hey, Kim, can you come out? I've got a tour going on. You said in this case, like you crashed the audition. You got yourself there. You pushed on the door and you looked for that. And I think that can be applied to lots of different areas of life. We look, oh no, this company doesn't have any jobs and it's my dream company. Like email them, ask them, be in their mind, email them every 6 months. Keep going out, push out to these people, message them. Like every brand has people working on social media now. Just message them. It's amazing what you can do when you actually don't just look for opportunities or someone saying, hey, come along, or we've got this, we've got that. When you say, can I come to this? Can I do this? It's amazing the difference that makes. And in your case, like you can look back and say, like, if I hadn't asked that, imagine the trajectory that you would have been on differently.
Exactly. I completely agree. I remember back then, because I would say I'm like pretty shy when I don't know the people in the room. Like I'll just kind of stay quiet, stay to myself. But I remember one of my best friends saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Like, Kim, you have to step up, because while you're not, like you're saying, sending that email, knocking on that door, someone else is, and someone else will end up with a job. So, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You have to just give it a try. I think like you, and I think it's really worth just going after it, asking, using your voice, speaking it out loud. We tend to think that people just know what we want, but they don't if you don't talk about it. So I really think it's important to go out there and just, manifest out loud what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you said that you had these goals, to dance with Beyoncé and, all the people that I named at the top. How was it to actually achieve those? Like what, they have like the Olympic gold medal effect, that people actually kind of can fall into depression after the Olympics when they've achieved all of their goals. How does that manifest in your life? When you achieve those pinnacle moments?
I love that you're bringing this up, because I feel like it's been the main conversation with a lot of my friends and I, because we're all kind of transitioning out of dance at the moment. And it's that same, effect as an athlete, the sort of, okay, well, I'm a little too old for this, even though I love it. Now younger dancers are being booked for it. I look too old, or who knows, or my body is just not following. Like I can't dance as hard as I used to, So it's our reality, and it can be difficult. And I think what's important when it comes to that is to prep ahead of time and have these conversations before it's the end, or before you're like, oh, what's next? To start dabbling and being curious and open to different hobbies or different things that you like to do. But when it came to like actually booking those jobs, the feeling is just so, pinch me, incredible. I cried the first time I, found out about Beyoncé. That was really my number one. I had auditioned for her way back when I still lived in Montreal. There was an open call in New York, and I got there and I didn't get the job. And then I moved to LA years later, go to another audition and make it all the way till the end. I think there was like 13 or 14 of us left, and they were looking for 10. And I just like gave everything I had, and I felt so confident. I was like, okay, I got this. It's in the pocket. And then I called my agent, and she's like, yeah, Sarah, you're one of the 3 or 4 who didn't get picked. I was like, oh gosh. Okay. So it's a long process, but it makes, I think, the victory sweeter when it does happen. And so you live on this high, and it's incredible. But yeah, you do have to come back to reality. Like, even if it's not transitioning out of dance, it's after that tour, just that. You're on a high for I think we did 2 tours back to back with her, the Mrs. Carter show, and then Run the World with her and Jay-Z. And so for a year and a half, I'm just like living my best life. And then you come back home and you're like, okay, so what's next? And then what happens in the dance world is that if you're gone so long, you kind of get forgotten. You can get forgotten, not for everybody, but you've been gone. So you've been sort of replaced in any sort of camps or teams that you were working on consistently. So now all of a sudden you have to rebuild, like, oh, I'm coming off this high and I've been forgotten. And like, how do you get back into it? So it plays a lot of games on your mind for sure.
Yeah, it's funny the layers, on surface level, it's amazing, which I'm sure it was. But then, you lose some ground that you've got because you're out of it. You also are living this weird reality that when you come back, it's suddenly like, oh, I actually have to like go and do my food shop. Like all those little things that you don't really realize how much normality is quite mundane at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even the tour world, a lot of people will ask me, like, how is it living on tour or being on tour? And of course, there's great highs, but there's difficulties in that too. You're never with your real family or partner, if you have one, away from your bed and home. And the schedule can be brutal. If you're with an artist who does book a lot of nights back to back, all of a sudden you just travel from one country to the next. As soon as you land, you're going to the arena or the stadium, and then you perform that night, and then you travel again, and you're sleeping on a bus, and it could be hard on the body. So yeah, a lot of adapting to be done there.
So when you say that, immediately springs to my mind is Taylor Swift, who is currently on probably the longest tour that has ever been known to man. Like, goodness me, go her, incredible. And somehow like put out like a 30-song album at the same time.
I know.
Side note, like
magician.
Anyway, so say you're like a dancer on her tour. Surely that's an insane thing to undertake, or is it the dream?
I would believe that it's the dream. When you're there and you're auditioning, you kind of know what you're going after. And plus, from what I've heard, I've never worked with her personally, but from what I'm hearing is she's great to work with. There's respect and there's encouragement there, and there's great conditions too, in terms of, yes, the salary, but also just the way people are handling the situation and where you live and how you travel. And so it seems like a great dream job to have. And then of course, to know that you have a paycheck coming in, because tour is one of the only jobs that we have as dancers. Let's say you can be a part of a company as a dancer where now it's consistent, you've signed on for a year or two. But I would say in the commercial world, it's always very short and brief, right? It's like one award show, one commercial, one episode of a TV thing. But all of a sudden when you're on tour, you have that consistent, like every Thursday or every 2 Thursdays, that check is coming in. And that is a blessing, to know ahead of time that you will be okay and money is coming. So I'm sure that they're living their best lives right now.
It's interesting that kind of, I don't know if freelance would be the right word for it, but the freelancers of the world. One of my friends works in event management, and she goes to all these, like, she'll be in like Saudi Arabia, like, all these different places, but she's there for like maybe longest, like 3 weeks doing her thing. Sometimes it's just a few days. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's amazing. But then she's only, by the time it's got to the last day, say it's a 4-day event, day 4, she's got to know all of the different suppliers she's working with, the team that she's working with, everyone's getting on really well. Then it's time to go. And then she's going all the way to the start and start building that back up again. And then also it's the instability of, when am I going to get my next paycheck? When am I going to do this? It's all about contacts. It's all about experience, but balancing that. And I think I didn't know that if you move to LA, for example, that on it, and you're not from America, that you can't get, what do they call them? Is it survival job? Is that what they call it? Like the term?
I don't know, but that makes sense.
I feel like that is. I feel like not on Instagram, people be like, me and my survival job. And it is that, but yeah, I think that's probably the other side of it. So of course, I'm sure dancing with Beyoncé is incredible. Do you get to hang out with him? Like,
depending on the artist, there's some that, yes, absolutely, that we've gotten, to become friends, and I have their phone numbers, but I do not have Beyonce's phone number. At that point, she has her family, the baby, only Blue was alive at that point, but she's on tour with us. So is Jay-Z. Like they do their thing, but she is very present when it comes to rehearsals and building the show. I mean, this woman works so hard. And when you see her in action, you're like, oh, this is why you have gotten to the point at where you're at in your career. Arriving before us, leaving after us, is involved in everything. And it's just very empowering to see. And she's so sweet. She's really great. She's the type of artist, I remember, it really touched me when we first started talking about the looks for the tour. Sometimes dancers will look all the same or have wigs or whatnot. And this was us being just ourselves. And she would come up to us and be like, hey, Kim, like, how do you feel you're sexiest? Is this your hair down, up in a ponytail, curly, straight? Great, do that. Like, we had this sort of freedom to just be ourselves, our best selves, and feel really confident on stage. And I think that speaks a lot of volume with, you know, who she is and her values when it comes to like empowering women and having all these incredible women on stage with her. So yeah, she's a blast to work with.
Amazing. I love that. Just like, oh yeah, casually. Oh
yeah.
Incredible. But then I guess with dancing, obviously you have the physical skills and all of that you need to build up. But then I guess I don't know a huge amount about dancing, so do correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of it is about appearance as well and aesthetics, which then can lead to, when you have a group of, say, women together, it can be really positive, but I'm sure that there's also like a super negative side to that as well, especially when you're competing against each other for a certain role. How did that affect you, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it's still the reality today. I think there is, you know, there's work that has been done on more diversity and inclusion, which is so great. And it needs to keep going that route. But it is, you know, a part of the industry that we're in. The casting matters. That's what it starts with, right? You haven't even showed up to an audition and you're getting a casting that says, we're looking for, you know, Caucasian, this tall, does this type of style, her hair color's blonde, or, you know, it's the look first. They have a vision in mind. And I think once you can disconnect yourself from taking it personal, if you're not the casting they're looking for, it really helps you times 1,000. And of course, at first I was like, oh my gosh, they hate me. I'm too fat. I'm too this, you know, and we have ups and downs. Of course, we're dancers. You end up spending like 8 hours a day staring at yourself in the mirror. And like most people will just like, you know, glance at the mirror in the morning before leaving. They're like, don't love what I'm seeing. And so we were like forced to stare and look and compare, like you're saying. All of a sudden you're in a room with a bunch of incredible women. They all look fantastic. So it got to my head quite a bit when I first moved to LA, especially. There's this thing called a typecast. And so if you get to an audition and there's hundreds of people there and they don't have time to physically see everyone dance, they'll make a first cut, which is called a typecast. They'll ask everybody in the room to just line up side to side, row after row, and the people in charge are going to walk by, look at you up and down, get into your ear and say either please stay or no thank you, and then you're cut. You haven't danced, you haven't spoken, they don't know that you're funny, that you're kind, that you're professional. Like, none of that matters. It's about your look. So those are rough. They don't happen all the time, but it's just an example of what kind of industry that we're in, you know? So I think it's important to do the personal work. You need to, at home yourself, you know, work on the affirmations and the loving who you are for who you are and embracing what you have to offer and that you're unique. And I know it sounds very like cliche and, you know, but that's what it is. If you can do the work and then get out there and feel unstoppable, all of a sudden, like I remember just my mindset switching from comparing myself and feeling like, oh gosh, look at her long legs. Oh, I shouldn't have worn this. My hair looks messy. Or to, hey, you know what? I've worked so freaking hard. I've moved country. I'm here in Los Angeles. I've proven time and time again that I can do this. I'm going to give it my all. And if this door closes, it's because another door is going to open. And I think that mindset really sets the tone for me to start attracting what I want. So yeah, it could be very difficult. And of course, you know, there are times where we are on tour, you're like in super shape at the beginning, and then all of a sudden you fall into like the catering and the show here and there. You're not dancing as much because you're traveling. You gain a little bit of weight. All of a sudden you get a note on the dressing room door, like, hey ladies, make sure you're in top shape, just the way we hired you, you know? So it's a thing that constantly comes back, but I think you have to know yourself really well, take care of yourself, know what you have to offer, and not take it personal if you do get cut for that reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, good to get speechless when you're on a podcast, but I feel like I need to give it a moment. Goodness me. Yeah. Okay. That's a lot. Yeah. Goodness me. Wow. How many hours do you think you've spent in hair and makeup in your life?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I have no clue. I would have to do a little calculation here, but Yeah, it's a good like hour or two for every performance that we've done. Fun fact, a lot of times we have to do it ourselves. A lot of people will think like, oh, you're on, a huge tour with Beyonce. You have stylists, right? And makeup artists. And no, we get a quick little tutorial and like, here's what we're looking for. Good luck. So that's something you definitely have to work on as a dancer to be able to do your own face and hair and to the best of your ability. But yeah, it's a good question. I would have to come back to you with a number.
I'm going to get a message through, be like, it was 3 years and 21 days.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I guess lockdown primarily was when TikTok dancing kind of rose.
Mm-hmm.
How is social media generally, but then I would say kind of TikTok and maybe that sort of element impacted the world of dance, professional dancing, or has it had an impact?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think they're quite different. So if I start with Instagram, I would say that it really is your digital resume as an artist, as a dancer. It's your new business card. And so I always encourage, of course, with a healthy mindset behind it and, process, to use it as much as possible. So, because it happens all the time. I'm a dancer, but I'm also a choreographer. I've been on the other side of the table where I'll pitch dancers to, let's say, a client. I'm doing this commercial, I want to hire these and these people. I show them their headshots and resumes and they say, great, but can we see their Instagram handle and page? Like they want to see who they get to work with, what they're about. It's not just about the followers. It does for certain, projects, it does matter. But most of the time, they just want more information on you. So I think it's important as a dancer, or even I think actor, singer, like everyone that's sort of in that realm, to showcase all that you can do. Because all of a sudden, I like to say that it's like a business deal waiting to happen. If they pop on your page and you're showcasing a bunch of different things that you can do, then all of a sudden they're like, ooh, she's perfect. Let's hire her, right? And so Instagram, I think, it's a great tool to use as a dancer. Now with TikTok, I haven't been hearing that as much. It might switch over, in the future, but for now, people aren't studying TikTok profiles to see if you have the right stuff. But it has created the whole like Insta famous, dancers that are known for their name. They're not backup artists for someone else or backup for a movie or this, that. They're them. Like I want to hire Kim for her and her TikTok. And so it has created this new avenue for dancers to be able to make money other ways, like branding and, collaborations, which I think has affected the industry in general, in a sense that not as many young dancers are coming up for older dancers' jobs, if that makes sense, because they're seeing that there's this new avenue. So I'll meet a lot of, young dancers who are not dreaming of dancing with Beyonce or with Taylor Swift, or they're like, oh, I want to be famous. I want to be known. I want people to like hire me for me. I want to work with this clothing company. Which is great. Like every dream is wonderful. And so there's like sort of a split that has happened the past few years. That's interesting to look at.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? Because you can have that whole profile online, and I love how you describe it as like your CV is your Instagram. Because then I guess people who don't use it in a business sense or a professional sense are interacting with other people's Instagram, which is business-like, and they're like, oh my goodness, like mine is so not like that. And then there's a whole different layer of people interacting and trying to work out social media, and that's, I guess, where it comes into having perspective on everybody's reality and the highs and lows and things like that. But then it's so interesting that it's actually changed the career sense in that, no, I don't want to go and do that, which is kind of the pinnacle. Like who else are you going to dance with? Beyonce, obviously. Like, it's the top of the tree, but it's a different route that to get there or to get to a different destination as a professional dancer. Yeah, it's really interesting to kind of talk about that impact on it, because I don't think it's a very obvious one that you would necessarily think of when you think, what's the impact of social media on the professional dancing industry?
Yeah, that's like, I think about it and I'm sure there are some crossovers, but not that many of like dancers that have become famous on TikTok. That means they're probably taking most of their time and energy to create these reels and to push that. So they're not in the classes or at the events or sort of the networking I was talking about earlier on. They might not be doing that. They don't have time for that. So I feel like it kind of splits in two, depending on your goals. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch and consider and think about.
Yeah, and then as well as being a professional dancer, you do lots of other things as well. So you've got a mentorship program that you've been working on. And how is that? Would you say that you're kind of stepping back from professional dance and like moving on to another point in your career, or are these other things that you're bringing in to go alongside it?
Yeah, so it was alongside it for a while, and now I've come to a place where, barely dancing, or I mean, I'm still dancing for fun and taking classes or teaching here and there, but to book these jobs, like, so I'm back in Montreal. I've moved away from Los Angeles, and I kind of feel, to be honest, like I've done the things I wanted to do in Canada. So it's not like, oh yeah, I want to back up dance. Like I've back up danced for those artists 10, 15 years ago. So yeah, I kind of feel like, okay, my shoes are on the side. They're not quite like tucked in fully, but I'm deciding to transition. So I've been toying around it. My word has been stay curious. Let's just be curious, because I don't know what's the next heck yeah. Like it was so clear as a dancer what I wanted to do. And now I'm like, I'm not sure. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So I've been doing some choreography. I've been, doing some movement coaching for different actors and actresses and models and different projects. I have my mentorship program, professional dance career course, where I teach dancers from all around the world, which has been like my baby. And that's probably like my most exciting project. I do some conferences too, like public speaking here and there on self-confidence and other topics. And so, yeah, I'm toying around with different things, and I'm curious to see and excited to see where it's going to lead me to in the next few years.
So when you have your mentorship program and you have your mentees, what advice are you giving them based on your own experience?
Yeah, I give them as much as I can. I'm definitely an open book, and maybe sometimes it's too much. And this is why it's PDCC, right? Professional Dance Career Course. So PDCC is online. And at first it was something that was done coaching in person. And then I transformed it to an online process so that they'd actually get to go back to it whenever they want, because it's so much information. So it's one thing when, let's say, you're starting out your career, you have me as a coach, you're digesting certain information, and all of a sudden you hit a block or an obstacle later on in life. Well, you can come back and maybe hit up, okay, module 2 or chapter 5. There you go. She was talking about this. So to be honest, it does cover quite a lot of things. But yeah, we don't dance physically at all. It really is all about your career in dance. So, auditions and representations, finances, it's a huge one. I know we talked about it a little bit before. Like, you have to be that smart dancer that puts money aside, because you don't know when your next job is. Social media, branding, networking, and then your mental aspect is huge in my program. We talk about just building your confidence, not playing the victim, knowing how to go forward and get things done for yourself and everything.
And do you think there's like one piece of advice that maybe if you would give it to your younger self at the start of your career, what would it be?
To take up space. I think it would be that, to just shine bright and not be afraid to, and which I think I sort of did at times, I like to say that I have like this alter ego or whatnot, whatever you want to call it. But the switch does flip to on when I'm like in front of people or an audition or a big class, and I'll be like, okay, let's go to the front, let's do it. And it really does come back to when we were saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, you have to go for it. So I think that it's really embracing who you are. So I would have you like make a list of all your strengths, but also all your weaknesses, and then start betting on your strengths. And then your weaknesses, it's either you start working on them, you get a coach, you get a this, a that, a certification to get better at it, or you just learn to love them and accept them. And so by doing this groundwork, I think you're coming in and you're a force to be reckoned with, because that confidence will shine through, that aura. I'm going to be like, who is this person? I want to work with them. Like, I'm sure you've had that feeling of someone coming in the room. You're like, I'm drawn to them. I don't know why. Like, there's just that confidence in them. So that would be my advice, to really, make the time to see what you have to offer, what makes you unique, work on those weaknesses if you want to build anything new, and then just go for it. Knock on doors, send those emails, reach out to those people, have the coffee with the idol that you have, pick their brain,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when you mention when you come into the room and you can feel that force of people, I think it's like 4 seconds or something that people make their first judgment. And it's not even like they don't notice it, it's subconscious. It's body language. It's not just your outfit. It's what's your facial expression, what's your body language, what's your posture, a massive one. Like things like that. You can walk in, not say a single word, and people will have like summed you up to an extent. And if you've had it negative because you kind of walked in and you're not really looking, or you're on your phone or whatever,
Yes.
you have so much more ground to make up than if you walked and looked people in the eye and said hello, or, you know, anything like that. It's funny, isn't it? The impact that little things actually have.
Absolutely. I have a friend who, and I love that sort of image. She's like, I put my cape on. So picture this glamorous, whatever kind of cape you want. Maybe it's bedazzled, it's flashy, and you picture you have it on when you walk into a room, when you walk into an audition or an interview. And it just, your posture, it changes the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. So something to keep in mind, I guess. Your posture, shoulders back. So we are almost halfway through 2024, which is quite shocking to actually say. But what does the rest of 2024 and beyond look like for you? What are your plans?
Yeah, you're actually catching me at an interesting, I guess, crossroad sort of year where so my husband and I like to do a lot of van lifing. So we'll be gone for a month or two at a time, and we just travel, read books, hang out, be in nature. And I did a lot of thinking in the past trip that we just did, and a lot of journaling and going with the conversation on me transitioning. I'm taking the time to take a step back for the rest of the year. So I'm going to be super picky with the jobs I say yes to. I communicated that with my agents, and I'm kind of taking, I guess, a semi-sabbatical. There's this part of me that's really craving, like wanting to learn to cook better and like do renovations at home and get like dirty into the garden or whatever it is. Like there's like sort of like that homestead and homey vibe that has been calling my name for the past few years. And I'm finally taking a decision to like embrace that and see where that leads me. And then also I think it'll create the space where I get to see what I missed most out of dance. Is it dancing? Is it choreography? Is it teaching more? So I think I'll be able to get some answers when it comes to like what's next career-wise by taking that step back and slowing down.
Yeah, the value of taking a step back and actually looking at the whole picture, where you want to go, and not just be stuck in the busyness of situations, jumping from one thing to the other, is so valuable. But it's quite scary, I guess, to actually have the courage to take a step back and do that and believe in yourself in that sense. But the value that it has is huge. So that's exciting for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's scary, of course, like just financially, let's say, of course, it means that there, less is coming in. But I think what's the biggest fear in that I, working through is almost like the FOMO, like the fear of missing out, or like am I going to break my momentum? People are going to stop calling. They're going to think I've moved on to something different. Or like, am I crazy? I feel like all my friends would say yes to this job, but I'm saying no, like why? But I think you just have to like quiet the noise and focus on you and what feels best for you, and just give it a try. And if anything, then you've gotten your answer and you pick back up if it was the wrong way to go. There's no wrong way, but you know what I mean? If it doesn't feel as right, you just get back on the horse and start working again.
Mm-hmm. And if people want to follow you online or check out your mentorship program as well, where should they go?
Yeah, so any dancer out there or anyone that knows a dancer, I have a dance page. So it's my full name, Kim Gingras Dance on Instagram. And I give daily tips and tricks. I have lots of free guides for them to take a hold of for free. And then my personal journey with probably more cooking and hiking and all that is my name, Kim Gingras. So I'm on those both pages on Instagram. So that's where you could find me.
Amazing. I will link those below as well. And thank you so much, Kim, for coming on and chatting to me all about, I feel like we've gone through the whole story. I feel like it was quite nicely, I don't know, I feel like it's closure, isn't it? We've gone from start to finish. So I really enjoyed that. Thank you for answering my questions on dance as well. I feel like I've learned a lot.
You are the sweetest. I'm so glad that I got to speak with you today. Thank you so much.